Hello, everyone. Today we will discuss about Turkey's international migration policies regarding its geopolitics. It's going to be our lecture today. For briefly introducing myself, my name is Atahan Demirkol. I'm a PhD candidate and a research assistant at Afyonkarahisar University, Turkey. And I've been working on international politics, international migration, international law, and international security. And focusing on Turkey's international policies, migration policies right now, we will try to look its connection with geopolitics of Turkey. So for a lecture plan, we will start with a basic introduction, a brief introduction. Then during the introduction, we will try to understand what are the main features of Turkey's geographical location regarding its international migration policies. And we will also try to understand the background of geopolitics of Turkey regarding its international migration policies. Then we will go through Turkey's geographical location and migration nexus. In that section, we will try to understand the geographical location of Turkey and its effect on the migration and migration routes. So we will try to understand how Turkey's geographical location affects migration issues in Turkey through the geopolitical issues. And after that, we will look on international migration history of Turkey. And as a successor of Ottoman Empire, we will also focus on the international migration history of Ottoman Empire in that section, because the geography is still the same, except some changes in the borders. But we are generally speaking of, when we are speaking of Turkey's international migration history, we have to start with the Ottoman Empire. And because of that, we will also start with international migration history in the Ottoman Empire. And then we will go through Turkey's international migration policies. So in that section, we will basically try to give you a brief outline for Turkey's international migration policies from its establishment through 2022. And in the last section, we will focus on Syrian refugee flow and Turkey's geopolitical role on it regarding the EU-Turkey relationship. That means that we will focus on the Syrian refugee flow because it's the most recent and it's the mass refugee flow from Syria because of the civil war in the country. And Turkey is hosting a lot of Syrian refugees right now. And it also affected EU-Turkey relationship because of the geopolitics. And we will try to use it a case study for our lecture. Before that lecture, after that lecture plan, I would like to start with some conceptual framework. The concepts that we will be using through the lecture. I have to make all of these concepts clear in your mind. And I would like to make it, really clear that what I refer when I use these concepts. For starting, migrants, and generally for this lecture, when we say migrant, it means that a person who moves to another country from their home country for intent to stay and settle down in the host country. And there are various definitions for migrant. For example, Eurostat defines migrant as the person who stays in a country for at least for a year. But in the lecture's concept, we can say that migrant is a general term for people who moves from their home country to a host country, and they are doing this intent of stay and settle down in the host country. And before going to difference between migrant and refugee, we have to talk about the 1951 Convention. That's the convention of concerning of refugees status by United Nations. UNHCR, we can say that United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. And for the literature, we see that the 1951 Convention is regarded as mostly regarded as the constitution of refugee studies and constitution of refugees, because it, in the first time in the history, it defined the refugee term through a legal document. Uh, so this convention is important, and for the refugee definition and for the principles like non-refoulement, which is prohibiting countries to send the refugees back to their home countries if there is still a threat for their lives. So we will basically talk about the 1951 convention during the lecture, but for a brief introduction, that's the convention of the Constitution of Refugees in Refugee Studies by United Nations. For the refugee, we can say that it's defined well in the 1951 convention, but since it's just a lecture, I don't want to copy paste the original definition in the 1951 convention here, rather than making my own definition. Refugee is a person who fled from their country, their home country, because of some like discrimination, uh, because of their religion, because of their political views, because of their beliefs, and because their lives were threatening by the home country, and they were in life threat. So they had to leave their country because of the threatening issues in their host country. So and settle down a third country, and in a safe third country for a certain time as a under a special status. And asylum seeker is related to refugee status. Asylum seeker is the person who also fled their country because of persecution and life-threatening issues, and still waiting for the refugee status in a safe country. So a person who moves to a host country from the home country becomes a migrant at the first. It's a migration movement from home country to destination country. And when they are in danger for because of their religion or their belief or their political position or something like that, they apply for refugee status. During that application, until the decision is made, they are asylum seekers. So that's the connection between migrant, refugee, and asylum seeker. So asylum seeker is a temporary status until the person get the refugee status. And we will also talk about push and pull factors, which are really important for international migration studies and which are really well known in the literature of international migration studies. It is firstly designed by Everett Lee, and push factors and pull factors basically explain the migration movements between the home country and the destination country. So push factors are the factors that makes people to leave their home countries, like as I said, maybe environmental issues, maybe hunger issues, maybe civil war or other threats for their lives. These are the push factors. Maybe the economic factors in their home country, like the unemployment rate grows up, or the prices were really high, the inflation is really high. These are all can be considered as push factors. But pull factors are related to the destination country. So when we say about pull factors, these are the factors that attract migrants or refugees for going to another country, going for a special country, not another country or not another um, another random country. For example, people are coming from Afghanistan, let's say to Poland. So there are push factors in Afghanistan. We can say that maybe the economic situation, maybe the political situation, but there are also pull factors for Poland, to people to go to Poland for their migration movement, which can be the pull factors. Maybe the easy situation or easy process for getting the migrant status, or maybe the migration networks, that the migrants have between their home country and Poland, and maybe the economic situation in the Poland can be a pull factor. So we can say that push factors are pushing people from leaving, pushing people to leave their home countries, and pull factors are the factors that attract migrants and other people to come to the destination countries. And after that, we will also mention about open door policy, which is abbreviated as ODP in that lecture. Open door policy is a liberal policy for international migration and migration movements, which means that the countries open their borders for the refugee movements or migration movements because of the liberal perceptions of the international migration, such as like human rights, such as helping to the victims of the war or something like that. It's a basic concept like opening the doors and opening the borders. After that, we will start with some preliminary questions to our lecture. These preliminary questions are, we are in a YouTube video right now, so I'm not gonna wait any answers from you. That's impossible because of the concept of the lecture, but I will give you some time for thinking about these questions, and you can pause the video, try to think about and try to answer these questions. Then you will hear my answers to these questions also. So first of all, what do you know about Turkey's geographical location? This question is important to understand geopolitics of Turkey regarding international migration, because the location is really spatial for migration movements. And for Turkey's, when we are talking about Turkey's international migration flows and routes, Turkey is in the epicenter of the routes of international migration from so-called third world to first world. So basically, answering this question, we have to remind that Turkey is connecting Europe continent and Asian continent. So it's a bridge between Europe and Asia. That means that it's also connecting Middle East to the European countries. So for some studies, they say that Turkey is connecting third world to first world. So it's a bridge between two civilizations, they say that. But I'm making a reservation right now because of that definition to civilizations. Someone can say that these are different civilizations, but I have a reservation here. But I'm not going to go in details because of the scope of this lecture. So for the first question, we have to say that we have to remind that Turkey is connecting two continents, and Turkey is in the epicenter of the migration routes from Asian part of the world to the European part. So that's important for international migration studies and the geopolitics of Turkey for regarding the international migration. So for the second question, we will go through that. What do you know about Turkey's past migration experiences? So it's possible that you don't know anything about the Turkey's past migration experiences except the Syrian refugee flow. But you have to remind that Turkey has had a lot of migration movements since the Ottoman Empire. If we consider Ottoman Empire as a ascendant of the Republic of Turkey, and Turkey's geography has had a lot of migration movements from east to the west, and these are including population exchange between Greece and Bulgaria. These are including the Kurdish movement, Kurdish refugee or migration movement, mass movement from Iraq because of the Gulf War in 1991, and the recent refugee flow from Syria. So Turkey has had a lot of refugee or migration movements during the Ottoman Empire and Republic of Turkey. And for the third question, I would like to ask that how Turkey's geopolitics are important for international migration. So as I said, for the answering this question, Turkey's geopolitics are important for international migration. It's obvious because Turkey has a specific location and Turkey has a specific relationship with European Union and Middle Eastern countries. So Turkey is at the center of uh, two continents, as I said. So being at the center of two continents, it makes Turkey is important for the international migration regarding its geopolitics, because European Union has a different agenda, which we will talk about later, like externalization of migration management. And Turkey is being a part of that, as we see right now. And so these are the important points for geopolitics of Turkey regarding international migration. So the fourth question is that what's the relationship between EU and Turkey concerning the international migration? As I said while answering the previous question, EU has an agenda for externalization of migration management for decades, and Turkey is being a part of that policy also. So Turkey is important for the European Union because it is the border between European Union and rest of the world concerning the most of migration movements, because most of the migration movements, like the refugee movements, coming from the Middle Eastern countries right now, as in the case of recent, migration movements. So Turkey and EU relationship is important for international migration because it's the border between two continents right now. So for the last question, that's going to be an easy question for those of you who are interested with international migration. Which country is the leading host country for refugees in the world now? That's Turkey. For official numbers, Turkey has more than 4 million refugees in the country right now, and that makes the country for the leading host country for refugees in the world. So that's also an important issue, because when we are talking about international migration and geopolitical features of Turkey, having that much refugees and hosting them are really important issues for geopolitics also. Like for foreign policy, for domestic politics, these are really important issues. And this question is really important to understand the ongoing debates of refugees in Turkey right now. After these preliminary questions, we will start with the first topic, Turkey's geographical location and migration nexus. So in the map, you will basically see Turkey's all geography and some of its neighboring countries like Syria, Iraq, Iran, Armenia, Georgia, Bulgaria, Greece. These are important because, as I said in the first question of the preliminary questions, Turkey is connecting the two continents. Like Turkey is connecting Greece with Syria. Turkey is connecting Bulgaria with Iraq. Turkey is connecting Georgia with Greece. So because of the straits like the Bosporus, Istanbul Bosporus, Turkey is the location for and the route for refugees coming from the Middle Eastern countries to the European countries. So we have to remind that Turkey's geographical location, is important for migration studies and migration nexus. That explains the migration flows from Middle Eastern countries or Eastern countries to the Western countries. So basically, Turkey is in the center of these flows. We can say that. So in a wider map, you see that the other countries and locations for Turkey and the other migration routes. Like you see Istanbul, or you cannot see it on the map, but at the south part of Istanbul, there are some islands which are really close to Greece, and some of them are Greek islands. So most of the refugees in the recent years were trying to cross the sea, the Aegean Sea, from Turkey to Greece. So and some of them were trying to take the route from Turkey to Italy also, and you see that that's the main leaving point for refugees when they want to go to European countries. So that makes Turkey is important because of its geographical location for the international migration routes and flows. So as a conclusion of that section, we can say that Turkey's geographical location is important for migration because it is between two continents like Europe and Asia. And because of that, it's in the epicenter of migration routes. So as I said, it's also considered as a bridge between so-called first world and so-called third world. So it's also close to unstable regions, which are mainly regarded as Middle Eastern countries, especially after the Arab Spring, and which are creating a lot of refugees in the world right now. So most of the refugees are coming from these regions, and they are taking the route from their countries to European countries through Turkey. So that's important for Turkey's geographical location and migration nexus. We will also start with Ottoman Empire and international migration right now, and we will try to analyze the key aspects of international migration policies of the Ottoman Empire, and we will also go through the international migration waves in the Ottoman Empire, and then we will continue with Turkey's international migration history and policies. So there are some key aspects for international migration policies of the Ottoman Empire. We can conclude them in or group them in three different subjects, like political concerns, humanitarian concerns, and geopolitical concerns. For the political concerns, we have to mention about the population and identity politics. And for the humanitarian concerns, we have to talk about human rights protection. And for the geopolitical concerns, mostly at the last decades or in the last century of the Ottoman Empire, we see Islamification and Turkification. So what are these? What do they mean? That's important to talk about right now. So for the political concerns, in the 17th, or we can say that 18th or 19th centuries, the Ottoman Empire was losing its territories, including some good population, like huge populations, and some ethnic and religious populations also, as well as Turkish population and Muslim population. So the political concerns are coming from that the Ottoman Empire was losing its territories and its population, and it was important for the empire to increase their population and create the identity of Ottoman Empire. So because of that, Ottoman Empire tried to configure the migration policies as a tool for population and identity politics, which we will explain later. For the humanitarian concerns, the Ottoman Empire was also aiming to human rights protection for the international migration policies. It was accepting refugees from all around the world. For example, we can say that like the Sephardics from Spain, and there was a lot of political figures from rest of the Europe that wanted to refuge to Ottoman Empire because of persecution. And there was also geopolitical concerns, mostly at the last century of the Ottoman Empire. It was Islamification and Turkification. So the Ottoman Empire was trying to unify its population under the Islamification firstly, and then Turkification. Because of that, the Ottoman Empire also used international migration policies to achieve these goals. There are some push factors and pull factors, and for the international migration towards the Ottoman Empire, we can say that the push factors for the countries who or people who like to leave their countries were saving their lives, saving their wealth, and saving and protecting their beliefs and preserving and prevailing their beliefs. And there are some pull factors because of the Ottoman Empire's policies. And these were open door policies for the migration movements and providing aid and exemptions to the Muslims and Turks. So these are the pull factors of Ottoman Empire for the international migration policies. So for the Ottoman Empire and international migration, we can say that the Ottoman Empire followed an ODP for Muslims until 1908 and providing them the migrant status and providing refugee status for the non-Muslims also. And but we see that the policy was changed during the war and nation building process between 1913 and 1923. The ODP stopped at that period, and because it was the First World War period, and after that it was the nation building period of Turkey. So they probably didn't want a migration movement uh, for dealing about this issue also during the war and nation building. And the most important thing is maybe we have to say that for the Ottoman Empire's ODP policies and liberal migration policies, the loss of population and land caused the need for immigration. What does it mean? It means that because of the loss of the population and land, the Ottoman Empire was losing its tax revenues, and there was a decrease in agricultural production also. So because of that two issues, the Ottoman Empire wanted to increase the international migration towards its lands to increase the population so that increase the tax revenues and promote the agricultural production. There are namely three groups of main reasons for ODP of the Ottoman Empire for the international migration. It's believed that diversity in the population is going to save the empire. That's the political reason. And there's another reason, which is military reason. At those times, having a most populated military was really important for empires or countries in terms of its military power. So the Ottoman Empire needed for more population for the military means because of losing the lands and population, the military was also weakened. And for the economic reason, we also mentioned about that in the previous slide. The economic production, such as agriculture, is really important for the empire during those years, and losing the lands and territories and people, population was really negatively affecting the economic production, especially in the agricultural sector. But we have to say that the Ottoman Empire generally didn't follow the ODP to non-Muslims. And there were also some other groups like gypsies, anarchists, spies, and those with epidemic diseases. The Ottoman Empire, although it was following the ODP mostly for the Muslim people and Turkish people, there were some exceptions for the gypsies, anarchists, and spies, and with the people who have epidemic diseases. And for generally speaking, there are three reasons for ODP of the Ottoman Empire: the political reason, the military reason, and the economic reason. There is an important breaking point in the international migration politics and policies of the Ottoman Empire. It is 1856 call for immigration. That's really a breaking point, and that's a special issue for the international migration politics because in the 1856, the Ottoman Empire called for immigration to the empire, and it was published in the European newspapers, like the European countries' main newspapers. The call for immigration was published, and for this call for immigration, the Ottoman Empire was providing aid, land, property, and salary for those who would like to come to the empire. And one of the main aims of this policy was increasing the population and proportion of Muslims in the empire. which was really important for the political agenda, like identity politics of the Ottoman Empire. And after that call, there was a lot of people moving to Ottoman Empire. And because of that, for the first time in the Ottoman Empire's history, and it was the first example of an institution for migrants in the world at that time. The Ottoman Migrants Commission was established in 1860, which was assisting to the refugees for the providing aid, land, property, and salary, and it was also dealing with the settlement processes, and it was also helping to refugees or immigrants for finding places to stay, and for the providing the land process. The Ottoman Migrants Commission was helping for that. That's Muhacirin Komisyonu in Turkish, and that's the first example of, as I said, an institution at that time in the world for dealing with refugees and assisting to refugees. So Article 3 of the call for immigration is really important. That it's really showing that the liberal perception of international migration policy of the Ottoman Empire, and I quote it here, as it's in the slide. It says that settlers will be protected against any infringement of the religion they profess, and will enjoy religious freedom like all other classes of the empire subjects. So that's when you talk about an empire in the 19th century, that's really liberal and important agenda and policy for international migration. So there's an interim question. I would like to answer this question, but I think that I already answered this question, but you can pause the video right now and think about the previous talks that I did for answering this question. Why did the Ottoman Empire call for immigration to the empire? That's really important to understand such an attempt for increasing the population through to increasing the military power and military capacity, and increasing the economic resources of the empire also through the agricultural lands and agricultural sector. So the interim question is kind of easy, I think. You can understand the answer of this question by looking to the previous slides or taking the video to backwards, and you will find the answer. So for the concluding, we have to mention about the basic features of migration policies of the Ottoman Empire. The main feature of the migration policies of the empire was increasing the population because of economic, military, and political reasons, and following a liberal open door policy. And we have to remind that yet there was a liberal ODP policy. The Ottoman Empire was against mass migration and settlement of one group. Like in the literature, you can see that, or in the historical articles, you can see that there were lots of Jewish people who would like to settle down in Palestine, but the Ottoman Empire refused and rejected this request, because they don't want to, settle one group, one major group, to another part of the empire. So they don't want to colonize or make such groups to be dominant in the region. So they want a diversity. They want to create a diversity in terms of religion and in terms of ethnicity, and they want to increase the belief for the political identity of Ottomanism through the international migration. So for the last sentence, we can say that due to all of these features, the Ottoman Empire was using migration as a tool for the future of the empire, for saving the empire because of the changing identity politics, migration politics, and economic resources, and for the military needs. For the Turkey's international migration history, we will continue with Turkey right now, but we will also just a little bit look through the Ottoman Empire period. 1774 Treaty of Küçük Kaynarca is believed that the immigration started to be a problem, and because it was the treaty ending the war between Ottoman Empire and Russia, and after that treaty, the Ottoman Empire lost most of its lands for the first time, and most of the Turkish people and the Muslim population also. So because of that loss, and we can say that most of the migration started towards the rest of the empire's lands. And that was the first time that immigration started to be perceived to be a problem in the empire. And we also see some population movements after the Crimean War and during the Crimean War. And for the last time in the history of the empire, we see the 1914 population exchange between Greeks and Bulgarians and the Ottoman Empire. These are the important breaking points for the international migration history of the Ottoman Empire. And after the establishment of Republic of Turkey in 1923, we see a lot of migration movements after the establishment of the country, but we can, try to group them in the main and mass movements. These are the four mass movements right now. The population exchange after the 1923 between Greeks and Turkish people, and in 1989 we see Bulgarian Turks coming to Turkey because of the ethnic pressures in the Bulgaria increased by the government at that time. And in 1991, we see Kurdish migration because of the war pressures of the Gulf War. They were coming from northern Iraq. And for the last mass movement, we see that 2011 Syrian mass movement because of the civil war in Syria. For the population exchange, we can say that Muslims and Christians in the countries like Bulgaria, Greece, and Ottoman Empire were exchanged. And in the literature, it is said that it is noted that 1914 was a voluntary movement for a population exchange, whereas the 1923 was kind of not voluntary movement when it compared to 1914. And it was the population exchange between Greece and Turkey as a part of Lausanne agreement. And the 1923 affected more than 1.5 million people. And the aim for the population exchange was the nation building, homogeneity, and creating the identity of the countries, like for the two countries, Greece and Turkey. So we will now look on the Turkey's international migration policies regarding its laws and regulations. For the first thing we see in the Turkey's laws and regulations regarding the international migration, it is 1934 law on settlement. That's the first law on international migration for the Turkish Republic, Republic of Turkey, which lasted until 2006. After the 2006, it was renovated and it's still in the use. The law on settlement was defining who are refugees, who are migrants, and how are they going to be settled. It was defining all of these issues, the aid, the settlement procedures, and etc. And it was one of the first jobs of the new government, like the new Republic of Turkey, to deal with the international migration, because after the nation building process, we can say that, because the country was founded in 1923, and the law on settlement was published in after the 10 years of the foundation of the country. So during the 10 years, the country was dealing with other problems like nation building, like economy, like westernization, institutions, and something like that. And for the westernization, we also have to say that the Turkish Republic was trying to cut the tie between Ottoman Empire and Republic of Turkey in terms of its institutions, its laws, and its procedures, its regulations. So because of that, the law on settlement proposed a new understanding and way of managing the migration movements. And after that, we see the 1951 Refugee Convention, which is really important for Turkey right now, because Turkey has put a geographical limitation on the definition of refugees, along with Congo, Monaco, Madagascar. And the geographical limitation basically means that Turkey does not grant refugee status from the people outside of the European countries. So that's why I will explain it later, but that's why today we are not granting refugee studies. Turkey is not granting refugee studies to Syrian refugees. We say that Syrian refugees, but in the academic area, but for the domestic law of Turkey, they are not refugees right now. They are under temporary protection. And between 1934 and 1994, there was no other regulations and laws and management systems or procedures or processes for the international migration in the country. And that is why this period between 1934 and 1994 was referred as the ignorance period of international migration for Turkey by some authors. So 1994 regulation was a result of 1991 mass movements of Kurdish people and the other people coming from Iraq region. And this regulation was following the geographical limitation and prepared a process for asylum and refugee applications, which are not related to that our lecture right now in detail, but for generally speaking, it was mentioning about the procedures for asylum application and refugee status. And after 2001, the EU harmonization process started, and we see that during that process, it was aimed to provide a efficient international migration law and migration management system. And that was also mentioned in the accession partnership documents of the European Union after 2000. And in 2005, we see that Turkey's National Action Plan for Asylum and Migration, which was including some provisions for the international migration law and international migration management system for Turkey, and which was also including some provisions about maybe lifting the geographical limitation on the refugee status. So after the 2011 Syrian refugee movement, mass movement, we see that 2013 Law on Foreigners and International Protection, LUFIP, which introduced the new migration management system. It still has the geographical limitation for the refugee definition, but it also introduced the conditional refugee definition for status for the refugees or people coming from outside of the Europe. So basically, conditional refugee definition is the same definition with the 1951 Convention of the refugee definition, but it only applies, the conditional refugee status only applies to those who are coming from outside of the Europe. And it also introduced the temporary protection for the mass movements, not an individual status for people coming from outside of the Europe. It's a group status, and it is firstly used for the Syrians under temporary protection in Turkey. And then we see that in 2013, the readmission agreement between EU and Turkey, and which was one of the breaking points for international migration policies and regarding geopolitics of Turkey. And in 2016, we see the expansion of or the continued process of the readmission agreement as EU-Turkey deal, which was aiming to visa-free travel for Turkish people and providing 6 billion euros financial fund for assisting refugees in Turkey. And the status is still pending in 2020, was still pending in 2020, and it has still been pending. After that brief introduction of the Turkey's international migration policies, we can start with 1934. Turkey had the ODP policy for the people only who has relationship with Turkish culture and Turkish descent. So that was a different and an important definition for the migrants. Migrant status was not granted to non-Muslims. And as I said, very few individual refugee claims were accepted because of that definition. As I said in the introduction part of the topic of Turkey's migration policies, the 1934 and 1994 period was defined as an ignorance period for some authors in Turkey. There were two main aims for the international migration policies of Turkey. One of them was creating the melting pot so that the homogeneous population, and the other aim of the international migration policies of Turkey was increasing the population and controlling the settlement, because in the law it was defined that who will be settled to which area, who will be provided the assistance for land or financial aid or something like that was determined in the law. So it was the controlling of the migration. And we can see that between the foundation of the Republic and till the 1997, we see almost 2 million immigration happened from Greece, Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, and Romania. So another important point for Turkey is it's a transition country from immigration to immigration, and it's also being a transit country right now. When we look up to the Turkey's international migration history, we say that immigration started with 1960s as a result of labor migration to the European countries like guest workers. The guest worker system was applied to Austria, Belgium, Germany, the West Germany, Holland, France, and Sweden. And in that period, Turkey has become a net immigration country, and most of the workers in Turkey, because of the unemployment rate and the high prices, high salaries in the European countries, they were going to European countries as a guest worker to live there for a certain time and then come back to Turkey. The aim was that. The aim was providing a labor force for the European countries for a certain time because of the lack of the skilled and unskilled workers in those countries after the Second World War. And it was aimed to be a temporary process and temporary period for the labor migration. But it didn't happen like that. Most of the people who actually, especially went to Germany from Turkey, stayed there, and they brought their families, and it became like a immigration to the Germany from Turkey. instead of being a guest worker system or labor migration for a temporary period. And right now, 6.7 million Turkish citizens are living abroad. That's the latest numbers. And that's important for also geopolitics of Turkey. We will also talk about later in that lecture. Turkey is also a transit country to European Union, mostly people coming from Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Iraq, Iran, and Pakistan. So we see that Turkey has been an immigration country and transit country since 1960s. But the situation has changed in the recent years. We will also mention about that. Or we can say that for the most of the people who would like to work in Turkey from the European countries, or who would like to settle in the country from the Eastern countries, like Middle Eastern countries, Turkey also started to be a country for immigration. And we can also mention that the Syrian refugee flow made it possible to say that Turkey is also an immigration country. 1991 migration and 1994 regulation that I mentioned previously, but we can say that it was the 1994 regulation was a reaction against 1991 mass migration movements from the Iraq. Almost 500,000 Iraq citizens came to the borders of Turkey in April 1991. And it was the first time Turkey was having that much diverse movement from other ethnicities and religions. And there was also security problems at the east part of Turkey at that time. It is known as PKK, the Kurdish Workers' Party in its original name, which was a terrorist organization and which is still a terrorist organization in the region, claiming the independence for the Kurdish, so-called Kurdish parts of Turkey. And because of that population movement from Iraq, security concerns of the Turkish government was also increased. So regulating the application process and management of refugees was important for Turkish Republic, and they created the 1994 regulation, and it came into force for the application processes and management of refugees. So after the 2000s, we see a new era in terms of EU-Turkey relationships. The EU accession period started, and the migration policies also shifted from homogeneity and nation building to the harmonization of policies between EU and Turkey. So in the EU accession partnership documents, it was suggested that they were suggested that lifting the geographical limitations and a need for new immigration policies harmonized with the EU system, and a need for new immigration law and a management system, and proposing proactive policies rather than reactive, because in all of the history of the international migration policies of Turkey, including the Syrian refugee movement, we see that these were not proactive policies, but they were also reactive policies for the reaction to the recent migration movements into the country. And in 2005, the Republic of Turkey announced the action plan on asylum and migration and proposed some provisions for such as lifting the geographical limitation, preparing a new migration law, preparing a new migration management system, and harmonizing the migration policies with the European Union. And in 2011, we see the mass migration of Syrians. So at the beginning, Turkey followed an ODP towards Syrians. It was a result of neoliberal approach of the ex-prime minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ahmet Davutoğlu. He was following that policy towards Syrian refugees and Syrian migration movements. Turkey opened the borders, and Turkey didn't ask for international help at the beginning because the situation was not was not expecting to last that long, and the expectation was short-term hosting for Syrians and a small number of Syrians because of that reason. When the hosting became longer, the government sought for international aid from European Union, United Nations, and other organizations like International Organization of Migration, IOM. And in 2013, from my point of view, when the Republic of Turkey understood that the situation will not be really short term, the new law on foreigners and international protection introduced to propose a new management system and for the international migration and propose a new international migration policy. So as a result of that law, Director General of Migration Management, DGMM, established, and Syrians were provided under temporary protection. So they were called as Syrians under temporary protection, SUTPs, as a distinction between 1951 Convention. So the other thing related to policies of international migration of Turkey was hosting the refugees, either hosting the refugees in camps or urban areas. And at the beginning, Turkey was establishing a lot of camps at the borders of Syria and hosting the refugees in the camps. But when the numbers reached to millions, the camps were not enough for capacity for the hosting refugees. So some camps were closed and refugees were transferred to urban areas. And now more than 90% of Syrian refugees or Syrians under temporary protection are living in urban areas in Turkey right now. So we will also go through with the readmission agreement of 2013. And in the picture that you see the visa-free regime title and the signature between two parties. So the readmission agreement was proposing a visa-free travel for Turkish citizens to the EU region. And it was also proposing a financial support for refugees. And Turkey was provisioning lifting the geographical limitation upon the EU membership. So the readmission agreement is really important for geopolitics of Turkey because Turkey had been resisting to sign a readmission agreement with European Union since 1990s because Turkey was claiming that if they sign such kind of document, Turkey will be a host country for most of the refugees, and Turkey will be the bumper zone or buffer zone between Europe and the other countries in terms of refugees. So Turkey was resisting to such an agreement, but in 2013, that was a turning point in the Turkish migration politics. I will also mention about some criticisms against it after the introduction to the topic, but we can say that it was criticized a lot because of putting the visa-free travel as a carrot for the Turkish side. In 2016, the EU-Turkey deal was signed and it was announced. In the picture, you can see the signing parties. It's Prime Minister, ex-Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoğlu, and he was the main figure of the neoliberal approach of the international migration policies of Turkey during that years. In that deal, the one-to-one formula, which is also known one-to-one scheme, was introduced. It was aiming that to the irregular migrants who passed to the Greek islands from Turkey will be readmitted from Turkey, and for the for a one person who was readmitted to Turkey from the Greek islands, the one Syrian from Turkey will be settled down into the EU countries. So that's one-to-one formula of the EU-Turkey deal. And the deal was also promoting 3 plus 3 billion euros for financial support. And it was also, again, including the visa travel for Turkish citizens to the European Union countries. When we look on the summary of Turkey's policies in response to mass flow from Syria, we see that period and time schedule. It started with 2011 at opening the borders. And in 2013, the Turkish government, the Republic of Turkey, put the LIFIP on effect. And after that, Turkey signed the readmission agreement with the EU, established the DGMM, regulate the work permit for the people under temporary protection, and signed the EU-Turkey deal. And in 2020, Turkey said that they reached for the limit for hosting refugees. And in the February 2020, after the Turkish soldiers were attacked and killed by the Syrian government, who was supported by Russian government, Turkey opened the borders and called for the movement of Syrian refugees to the European countries. So we see a policy shift as a clear image from this time period, I think. That's the summary for the Turkish migration politics and policies in response to mass flow from Syria. So there are some criticisms, as I said. I would like to mention about these criticisms right now. These are also related to geopolitics of Turkey regarding the international migration. So we can say that taking geopolitics to the front, the threat to refugees was it was named by some scholars in Turkey, and it was because of the president of the Republic of Turkey's some sentences, like some verbs regarding the European countries' wealth and Turkey's situation for hosting refugees. So the president basically said that if European countries are living in peace today, it is thanks to Turkey for hosting 4 million refugees. So I would like to ask some questions right now, and I will answer that. Has the Republic of Turkey been using Syrian refugees as a leverage in its foreign policy? How can we understand these questions? We can look to that question through the threat perception, through opening the borders. And has the Republic of Turkey acted against its motto of the world is bigger than 5 regarding the international migration policies? We can answer this question or approach this question through the readmission agreement for visa-free travel. For the first question, we have to say that there was a threat perception created by the Turkish government in the recent years of the Syrian mass refugee flow against the European countries, saying that Turkey could open the borders if you don't agree with that, with this or with that. So it was a threat and threatening issue in the international politics for Turkey and foreign policy. And for the readmission agreement for visa travel, we can say that, as I said before, Turkey was resisting for the readmission agreement for a long time. But when it came to the visa-free travel and 3 billion financial funding, Turkey started to consider the readmission agreement. So Turkey was saying that in its motto, the world is bigger than 5, but through accepting the readmission agreement, Turkey has become a part of Fortress Europe for guarding these walls of the Fortress Europe. There are some criticisms. They are not just my opinions, but there are some. These are some criticisms against international migration politics regarding the geopolitics of Turkey in the Turkish scholar area, and these are coming from some articles. As I said, there are some criticisms against Turkey's international migration policies, and you can see the image as a summary of my words regarding the Turkish scholars. So there are also some criticisms against Turkey's migration policies regarding its geopolitics through the TVEL approach, third world approach to international law. There are some authors claim that Turkey has used TVEL discourse in foreign policies, which is the world is bigger than five. And yet the migration policies of Turkey do not support the third world because of the readmission agreement, because of the lack of granting refugee studies, and providing the conditional refugee status for the people who are coming from outside of the Europe. In conclusion, we have to say that, or we have to look at geopolitical importance of international migration for Turkey. The geopolitical importance of the international migration comes from the creating Turkish diaspora, because, as I said, almost 70 million people, Turkish people, are living abroad right now. That's important for international politics and foreign policy and geopolitical reasons for Turkey to look on the international migration. And one of the other geopolitical importance of international migration comes from connecting the EU to the third world countries, so-called third world countries, as a bridge country or a migration route between those two groups. Because of connecting the EU to the other countries on the migration route, Turkey was perceived as a tool for European Union's migration management externalization process. And as we know from the literature, we can say that the externalization of migration management of EU is obviously EU wants to keep the migration out of their borders and want to manage it before it comes to the borders. So Turkey is one of the important part for this aim for the EU side. So that makes the geopolitical importance of international migration of Turkey because of the negotiations, possible negotiations between EU and Turkey coming from the Turkish side, claiming that we are hosting 4 million refugees. So if we open the borders, that may happen, but we are hosting them, so you have to do that or do this. That's a negotiation base for Turkish side, we can say that. And geographical limitation has also a point for Turkish side. The Republic of Turkey says that geographical limitation is important for the country because Turkey is in the epicenter of the migration route. So if they remove the reservation on the geographical limitation, Turkey will be hosting more refugees than they are hosting right now. So that's the reason for keeping the geographical limitation for the Turkish side. And as I said, Turkey has been criticized because of being the guardian of Fortress Europe as a part of externalization of immigration policies of the EU. And that comes from the readmission agreements. And Turkish scholarships also important for geopolitical importance of international migration for Turkey. Turkey has been providing scholarships for mostly for the African countries to the students who would like to come to Turkey for studying graduate degrees or undergrad degrees, and then they go back to their countries as a cultural ambassador of Turkey. So that's also another geopolitical importance of international migration for Turkey. And it's also important for foreign policy of Turkey, because Turkey, in one article written by a Turkish scholar, we could see that Turkey has used international migration as a leverage for gaining soft power in the region of Middle East and having a ground for negotiations with the European Union. So it is important for foreign policy in terms of soft power and negotiation power for the Turkey. So these are basically what I'm gonna talk today. This lecture is about, as I said, the international migration politics of Turkey regarding the geopolitics. And there are some references and suggested readings, so you can pause the video right now and look through these documents. Some of them are in Turkish, but most of them are in English. So these readings are suggested for understanding Turkey's and Ottoman Empire's international migration politics and policies regarding the geopolitics. And thank you for listening, and I hope it is helpful for your studies. And if you have any questions or comments, please write below, or you can like the video. Thank you for watching and joining to the conversation from your side.